Okay. Today we are introducing you to network maintenance objectives. We are describing network maintenance tasks. We are going to explain differences between proactive and reactive network maintenance. We describe a well-known network maintenance model. We are going to identify common maintenance procedures. And then we'll describe tools required for network maintenance. These are objectives, but they are also examinable questions or assignable questions where in an exam or in an assignment, I can ask you to explain the differences between two proactive and reactive network maintenance uh, differences. And then I could also ask you to identify common maintenance procedures. I could also ask you to describe network maintenance tasks. So these are not far-fetched questions. And when you look in the previous papers I have examined, you could see traces of some of these questions in there. So you need to have time and digest them well. You might meet them someday. Now, maintenance task. What is a task? What is a task? A task is any assigned duty or a piece of work to be done or undertaken. That's the task. So, what are the piece of work that must be done, or what are the assignments that one will have to do in the maintenance of computer networks? The first assignment is device installation and maintenance. Now, this includes the installation of devices and software and creating backup configurations and software. In the first place, the network is made of physical and logical topologies. The physical topologies are the physical machines, and the logical topologies are the services and the software that run the hardware. So if you don't install the hardware itself and then the software or provide upgrades or backing up your configurations, you cannot maintain your network. So device installation and maintenance is one task that will have to be performed as a network administrator or a network technician in the maintenance of computer networks. Now, failure response. Now, this is a task that must be undertaken to support users that experience network problems, troubleshooting device or link failures, replacing equipment, and restoring backups. So if you want to maintain your network and then you don't support the users of the network, you have failed. If you don't troubleshoot devices and link failures, your network will always be down, and what you seek to provide will not reach the needed audience. That means you have failed. You need to replace equipment and restore backups. Now, some of the equipment can be defective, some of them have issues, and therefore you need to change them. And then it's also imperative to restore backups. Now, the next maintenance task is network performance. Now, this task includes capacity planning. How many people are on your network? How many people do you envisage on your network? And therefore, what are you putting in place so that when all these people are on the network will be up and running? That is very important. And to make sure your network performs well, you need to perform tuning. Now, what is tuning? Even in your houses, when you put on your radio, especially some of these analog radios, and then the meter band is a bit shifted, you need to fine tune it. That means that make sure you get the right dial to get for you to be able to enjoy the best of sound. And therefore, in networking, we do fine tuning, and we make sure that we put all the things that are in place to make sure the network are running. And then you need also to monitor users. The users that are coming on the network, are they authorized? What kind of things are they doing? Are they doing unnecessary downloads that will bring your network down? Don't forget that every organization has a policy, and if it has a network, and then the organization depends on the network for productivity, it means that there should be priority on who uses what. And it's important to make sure that fine-tuning and user monitoring are key elements in your maintenance tasks. Now, business procedures. Another task include documentation. We know that in networking, documentation is one salient part or one very crucial task that must be performed to make sure that everything is up to date, and then you always have information on frequently asked questions. And then compliance auditing. Who is coming to which area of the network is being used by who? If it's the accounts department, if it's the finance department, who has the authority? Uh, who has to go in? Who has to come in? According to organizational policy, you need to audit your system, and then you make sure that you comply with service level agreements. We know what service level agreements are. They are the contract between, or the terms and conditions between a particular service provider and a user on how best the service provider will provide the service, and on how best the client will also receive the service, and their responsibilities. And service level agreements are very important as a network maintenance aspect, to make sure that you comply with your part of the service agreement, so that your business procedures will not have issues. Now, security is also one salient part, or one important part of the network maintenance task. Now, this includes following and implementing security procedures and security. Now, in security procedures are all the things that you have put in place to perform unified threat management, to make sure your network is up and running 24/7, so that you do intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, and then you have firewalls that are going to authenticate. You have all the necessary uh, security management systems that will make sure that your network is not infiltrated by unauthorized users. Your network information and salient company information are not siphoned by unethical hackers and all that. These are very important. So we want to talk about network maintenance procedures, or network maintenance tasks. We want to talk about device installation and maintenance, failure response, network performance, business procedures, and security. Now, what is interrupt-driven maintenance? What is an interrupt? Now, when you are talking and somebody says that don't interrupt me, it means that don't cut short what I'm saying, or don't disturb my course. So an interrupt is simply something that disturbs a course or something that happens to curtail a smooth running of something. So the most basic method of performing network maintenance involves responding to problems as they arise. And that is what we mean by reactive maintenance. So interrupt driven maintenance uses the reactive approach to respond to problems as they arrive. Now, the disadvantages include the following. Now, tasks are beneficial to the long-term health of the network might be ignored. Tasks that are beneficial to the long-term health of the network might be ignored, postponed, or forgotten. Now, this type of reactive or interrupt-driven maintenance is is that it involves in responding to problems as they arise. So you realize that when an issue arises before you try to solve it, your network will always be down. And uh, one of the issues or one of the disadvantages are that the long-term health of the network might be ignored. It might be postponed or might be forgotten because you want to wait for the problem to arise before you find solutions to it, and therefore it will not be too well for the long-term health of your network. Now, the second thing is that tasks might not be executed in order of priority. That means that you need to choose which one is more important to carry out. So when you go back to see the network maintenance task, you look at your organization and see if device installation is your priority, or your failure response, or your network performance issues are your priorities. Now, whichever makes the priority, whichever is your priority, in interrupt-driven maintenance or reactive maintenance, tasks might not be executed in order of priority or urgency, but instead in the order they are requested. Now, it is only when they happen that you solve. So the request to solve an issue is dependent on what has happened and not what is more important. And this is a disadvantage to the network. The third thing is that the network might experience more downtime than necessary because problems are not prevented. So if you don't prevent the problem, but you allow it to happen before you solve them, it means that anytime it happens, the network will have to be down. And therefore, you'll be losing your customers and productivity. And that will not augur well for your business, for the business aspects of your organization. And you know that any network or any service provider that provides a network that has a lot of downtimes, people tend to switch. For example, as for Vodafone, their data network is always up and doing. As for Glo, as for Airtel Tigo, my area is very bad. This and that and that and that. And today they are on, tomorrow they are off. The next day they are looking for another chip from another company that they think has an availability of the service, and that will not be good when people start looking for your alternatives in your business. It will not be good for your business. Now we want to look at structured maintenance. Now when we want to say something is structured, it means that it predefines and plans much of the processes and procedures. So we can also call it proactive maintenance. So structured maintenance can also be called proactive maintenance. When we say you are proactive, you see the thing from afar. You begin to work on it so that if it has any negative tendencies, you begin to solve it even before they arrive. So this proactive approach reduces the frequency and quantity of problems and address them more efficiently. So even as you are home and we are learning, if you don't continue to revise your notes, by the time we come to school and you need to take an exam, you will not have the time to do it and you will now have been proactive. So being proactive in life means that you are always prepared for an unforeseen occurrence or any occurrences that matter that could have could appear. So in the area of health, in the area of other businesses, we can say that coronavirus or COVID-19 has come as a shock, and the world had not had a proactive approach to issues when Ebola and other SARS viruses came about. That was what Bill Gates was talking about, or the former U.S. President Obama was talking about, that we needed to have what worked towards proactively, so that we will not have the numbers that have died in this world. So in life, when you are proactive, you are able to sustain yourself. You become more sustainable in the life processes. So in networks, when we talk about proactive maintenance, we want to say that look into the future, try and put things in place to solve the issues even before they occur. Now, the structured approach in network maintenance has some clear benefits over the interrupt-driven approach. Yes. So the reactive approach has a lot of disadvantages over the proactive approach. And therefore, one of these advantages that the structured approach has is that there's reduced network time, because it will not happen before it is solved. It is more effective or more cost effective, because you will not have to wait till the device becomes defective or broken down before you go and buy a new one. There's better alignment with business objectives. Yes. When you have companies like Jumia, companies like Alibaba or AliExpress, whose core business depends on computer networks to display their wares, to show their prices, or other e-commercial activities, you realize that when they are able to solve problems even before they occur, they will not have a lot of downtimes, and their business objectives will be met. And then there's higher network security. Good. If you have any question, you can type in the chat area. I'll look at it, and then I'll get back to you. Now, we want to look at standard-based maintenance methodologies. Standard-based maintenance methodologies. We have talked about standards. What are standards? Standards are yardsticks of measurement for quality. So we have several well-known network maintenance methodologies that have been defined by a variety of organizations. We have what we call the IT infrastructure library. We also have what we call FCAPS. We also have the telecommunications management system, and then we have the Cisco life cycle. So ITIL, which is the IT infrastructure library, It's a set of detailed practices for information technology service management that focuses on aligning IT services with the needs of a business. Now, with this ITIL describes the processes. It also describes the procedures and tasks, checklists, which are neither organization specific nor technology specific, but can be applied by an organization towards strategy, towards delivering value, towards maintaining a minimum level of competency. Now, this IT infrastructure library allows the organization to establish a baseline from which it can plan, from which it can implement, and from which it can measure. Now, it is also used to demonstrate compliance and to measure improvement. So, there is no formal independent third-party compliance assessment available for this IT infrastructure library. And that's for ITIL. And then we have what we call the FCAPS. Now, the FCAPS stands for the FCAPS stands for fault management, configuration management, accounting management, performance management, and service or security management. FCAPS, FCAPS. So that's the meaning. This is a methodology. So the IT infrastructure is what I've talked about. The FCAPS is also another maintenance methodology where you need to apply, or where network problems, for fault management, network problems are discovered and corrected. For configuration management, installation, identification, and configuration of a hardware and service. Accounting management is to be able to distribute resources among enterprise subscribers. And then performance management is managing the overall performance of the enterprise security network or the enterprise network. And then security management is the responsibility for ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And we call that CIE. So the model, this FCAPS, right, contains of fault management, contains of configuration management, contains accounting management, performance management, and security management. So for configuration management, what happens in the configuration management procedures are that there's scheduled configuration backups. There are manual, and in the scheduled configuration backups, the tools that are needed or the configuration management tool is a network management system capable of scheduled backups. Now, for manual backups, as part of the change procedure, the file transfer protocol server or configuration backup is the configuration management tool. Now, for automatic configuration checking in the configuration management procedures, the tools are the network management system that are capable of configuration comparisons. And then the last thing under configuration management is the mirrored off-site backups for disaster recovery. So an off-site or mirrored off-site backups for disaster recovery. The two are the tools that are used in this management procedure or configuration is backup system for file transfer protocol server. Now, upon selection of a network maintenance model, you must translate the theoretical model to practical procedure. So these are all theoretical models. And if you select a particular model or methodology, you have to apply it to the ground. Now, how do we identify network maintenance tasks? How do we identify network maintenance tasks? Now, all network maintenance plans need to include procedures to perform a network maintenance task. So we want to look at the procedures that can be used to perform particular network maintenance tasks. One, you have to accommodate adds, moves, and changes. You need to install and configure new devices. You need to replace failed devices. You need to back up device configurations and software. You need to troubleshoot link and device failures. You must upgrade your software with patches. You need to monitor your network monitoring. Last semester, that was the course. Network monitoring is what I taught. And network monitoring is a part of network management procedure where you systematically check the network to make sure that the network is up and doing, and to be able to salvage any situation when it is going out of hand. That's what we mean by network monitoring. So constant monitoring of your network processes, and that is what you need to do as one of the plans that you need to include in your network procedures to perform network maintenance. And then you need to do performance management and capacity planning. Performance measurement and capacity planning. So you need to see how your network is able to withstand the number of users, and that is your capacity if you have to upgrade. And then you need to measure the strength of your network to have the overall performance of your network. That is also one part you need to look at. And then you need to write and update your documentation. So in networking, if you will not remember anything, remember that you need to document. That runs through every aspect of any procedure, any task, any methodology. So network maintenance planning. You must build processes and procedures for performing your network maintenance task. What are these processes? These processes are called network maintenance planning. So what is planning? Planning is the process of making plans for something, or is the process of thinking about the activities required to achieve a desired goal. So it is the first and foremost activity to achieve desired results, and this involves the creation of maintenance of a plan. such as psychological aspects that require conceptual skills. So you need to conceptualize what you want to do. You need to think about activities required to achieve a particular goal. So to be able to build a process, procedure, and perform network maintenance tasks, the ability to do that is what we call network maintenance planning. Now, these planning include scheduling maintenance. Scheduling maintenance means that you need specific schedules to maintain your network. Now, you need to formalize change control procedures. Now, what is change control? Anytime you are a network administrator and your network confronts an issue, you need to rise above it. And then that change, you must have control over that change. For example, if a telco has an issue and a major issue, it brings a change in their productivity. It brings a change in the perception of their customers and users. And that, therefore, there's the need that anytime there's a change or a major change in your network, you need to have total control of that change and make sure you formalize the control procedures. What are the change control procedures? What are you telling your customers? What are you putting in place to make sure that your customers will not have other alternatives over you? And even if they have, what are you doing to make sure that they have a change of mind and you maintain? You need to have control over the change. And you know that change is something that not everybody or almost everyone does not like. When you are used to a way of going about one or two things every time and consistently achieving results, and there's a sudden change, you feel disorganized, you become disgruntled, and you feel that uh, that change has caused so much. So, as a network maintenance expert, when you want to maintain your your network, or you are planning to maintain your network, you need to have control of change. And then you need to establish network documentation procedures. Yes, anything that you do in the network, any changes, any upgrades, any procedures that are followed in the network to make sure the network is up and running must be documented. And that is the only way that will help you as an administrator or a technician to solve issues easily. That is the only way when you have experts to come and solve issues in your network. That's what they are going to depend on. So anything that has no documentation about it will not have any information about it. And there's the need to establish a network maintenance. There's the need to establish a network documentation procedures. Now, you need to establish effective communication. This is what has happened. This is what has happened in the network. How are you telling your customers? How are you making your customers aware so that they will adjust? How are you reporting to management? All these things must be defined and it must be included in your network maintenance plan. Now, you need to define templates, procedures, conventions, and standardizations. And then you also need disaster recovery. What are you doing when there is a lightning that is affecting your devices? What are you doing? How are you able to recover all the data or information, make them available to your customers? What are the insurance policies the organizations or you are undertaking? Frank, I'm on a lecture. I will get back to you. So what are you doing? What are you doing to make sure that you are recovering all the information that needs to be recovered? Disaster recovery is a very important aspect in network maintenance planning. And then we want to look at scheduled maintenance. With scheduled maintenance, the benefits of scheduled maintenance include the following. Now, when we talk about scheduled maintenance, we want to talk about things you have put in place to provide maintenance procedures. So, scheduled, it means that timely uh, timely structure that you have to follow in providing maintenance. Now, in scheduled maintenance, there's a reduction in network downtime. That is one. Long-term maintenance tasks will not be neglected or forgotten. That is two. Now, you have predictable lead times for change requests. And then destructive maintenance tasks can be scheduled during assigned maintenance windows, reducing downtime during production hours. So whenever you perform scheduled maintenance, the network downtime is reduced because you have times where the maintenance goes on. You have long-term maintenance tasks will not be neglected because from time to time, maintenance procedures are going on. Now, you have predictable, you can know beforehand when there are changes in the network request. And then anything that will interrupt the maintenance task can be scheduled during assigned maintenance windows. So when you have assigned that there should be upgrade and the upgrade should happen in the night, right? Those upgrades will be done in the night. So if it's a banking sector in the night, the peak hours have gone down and maintenance can go on in the night, so that in the next morning everything will be up and running, and you will not have a downtime during production hours. Change control. In different organizations, change control is formalized and answers the following types of questions. When we say formalized or formalizing change control, we say that we want to formalize something, you give a legal or formal status or give a definite structure or shape to something. So when we say that change control is formalized, it becomes an accepted legal document for a particular organization. So in many companies, when there are issues, there are accepted ways of handling the issues, and we say that they are formalized change control procedures. And these procedures answers different types of questions. One, now, which type of change require authorization and who is responsible for authorizing them? For example, you have an issue with your mobile money account. Maybe you are a merchant and there is a policy that for 2 or 3 times when your chip gets lost, the normal attendants cannot do it. It means that it must be escalated to a manager. The manager will have to investigate it. Maybe they'll have to wait for about 2 or 3 months before they can give you a restoration, and they have to make sure that truly your issues or the complaints you brought are genuine before. This is a structure. It's a legal documented procedure which must be followed. So if there's a change, it requires authorization, and who is responsible for that, for authorizing uh, the replacement of those chips for you? That is one important area you have to look at. And then, which changes have to be done during a maintenance window, and which changes can be done immediately? You can't just tell me that a bank's ATM machine that is working within the day should be interrupted and say that you want to do an upgrade or an update. It's going to cause a lot of mayhem. Or when the bankers are on their systems working, you say that as an administrator or as a network maintenance expert, you want to recommend an upgrade or an update or whatever. So which kind of maintenance procedures are supposed to be in the maintenance window? Which changes can be done immediately, and which ones can wait till they can be done in the scheduled window? That is also another question that emanates from change control that is formalized. And then, what other actions, such as updating documentation, need to be taken after a successful change? So what conditions allow skipping? What conditions allows skipping of some of the normal change procedures, and which elements of the procedures should still be followed? So all these things must be documented. When there's a change, there must be a document to show that the some change procedures are allowable and some are not allowable. All these things must be specified in a formalized document for a particular organization. So change control is very important, and the questions that emanate from formalized, or the answers, what answers the questions are what we have talked about. Now, network documentation. Now, this is a typical element of network documentation, and it includes network drawings. Last semester, I think I told you about them. Now, the diagrams of the physical and logical structure of the network. Yeah, so the physical and logical structure of the network, and then connection documentation. Now, this lists all relevant physical connections, such as patches, such as connections to service providers and power circuits. All these things must be documented. And then you must also document equipment lists. Now, list all devices, part numbers, serial numbers, install software versions, if they are applicable, and then licenses, warranty, service information. All these things must be in a documentation. Now, you need to administer IP address documentation. You need to list all the IP subnet scheme and all IP addresses in use. This is very, very important. The subnet schemes the addresses in use, so that anybody who comes into your network, or you as a network maintenance expert or a network administrator, can always know what you are working with. When there's a problem and you need to work on it, you know that you have the right information to work with. You need to configure you need to configure or you need to provide configurations. That is a set of all current device configurations. A set of all current device configurations, or even an archive that contains all previous configurations. And you need to have a documentation on that. You also need a design document that describes the motivation behind certain implementation choices. Yes, it's very important. Even when you go into any organization, sometimes they go out of their way to do certain things and they must be documented. And the reason why those things are done must be documented. So in your network, the reason why you have certain priorities over some others, the reason why you employ certain procedures, the reason why you use certain skills, or you whitelisted certain areas of your network must all be well explained in your documentation. And then in network maintenance, there must be effective communication. Now, communication is very vital both during troubleshooting and technical support and afterwards. Now, during troubleshooting, certain questions must be answered. What is making the changes and when? So when you are trying to bring out problems in your network, you must know what is making the changes. You must know how the changes affect others. You must also know that one. And what are the results or the tests that are done, and what conclusions can be drawn. So here, you remember in your chapters, you say that establish a theory of probable cause. Do that, do that, do that, do that, and then you do the documentation. This is what we are talking about. So for effective communication, you have to establish a theory of probable cause and how the changes affect each other, what are the results of the test, and what conclusions are drawn. Standardization. This is a way to streamline processes that make sure that tasks are executed in a consistent manner. And it is to define the document procedures, and this is what we call standardization. So standards are the way to streamline processes to make sure that tasks are executed in a very consistent manner. Now, defining and using templates as an effective method of network documentation, and it helps in creating a consistent network maintenance procedure. That is also part of standardization. And the processes of definition of templates and effective methods of network documentation are: processes are logging and debug timestamps set to local time or coordinated universal time. So we want to know whether debugging time, logging time are set in your local time, like Ghana time, or coordinated universal time. That's what you have to know. You also have to know whether you should access list end with an explicit deny any. Now, what is access list or access control list? It is the control of whoever you want to allow or deny access into your network. So when we talk about access list, we want to say that we want to say that it is a list of permission attached to an object. So an access list normally specifies which user or system processes are granted access to objects, as well as what operations are allowed or given objects. So should access list end with explicit deny any? It means that, does it mean that anyone who comes in must be denied? That is also a question that must be answered. Or in an IP subnet, is the first and last valid IP address allocated to the local gateway? That one must also be answered as a standard. Now, in network maintenance, we have what we call disaster recovery, like we mentioned. Now, the quicker you can replace a failed device and restore functionality, the quicker your network will be running again. So to replace a failed device, you need the following items: replacement hardware, the current software version of the device, you need it. The current configuration for the device must also be there. And then the tools to transfer the software and configuration to the device. That is the only way. These are some of the things that will help you to discover or recover this disaster. And then you also need licenses if they are applicable. Now, knowledge of the procedures and install or to install software configurations and licenses. You need the knowledge of the procedures to be able to install configurations and licenses. Now, if any of these ones are missing, it severely affects the time it takes to replace the device. So we want to talk about Cisco log severity levels, right? And when we talk about syslog, syslog is system log, or the number of times users are able to enter into a system is what we mean by syslog. And when we go further in your professional networking areas, you understand how syslog operates and how you are able to configure certain syslog commands on a particular server or a particular Cisco device. So the definition the log image 0 simply defines a panic condition normally broadcast to all users. For example, Cisco Internet Network Operating System software could not load. So, number one, log alert. That is a condition that should be corrected immediately, such as corrupted system database, and it will show on the device as temperature too high. And then log crate. That shows a critical condition, for example, hard device error, and on the device will not be able to allocate memory. And then you have errors, log error. That is an invalid memory size. That is what will show on a device. And number four, crypto operation failed on a particular iOS operating system means you have warning messages. And then interface change state to up and down. So the log notice gives you the conditions that are not error conditions but should possibly be handled especially. Interface change state to up or down. Now when you configure Cisco devices, right? Whenever an interface is configured, given an IP address, or they are provided with all the securities, the BTY passwords, and then others, you see that it says that interface maybe FA0/1 change state to up. It means that particular interface is ready to function. Now, when you already have app interfaces and the states are changed down, it means that either certain configurations are missing or a particular cable is pulled out of that connection, and it will say that the log notice will show you that there's a condition that is happening and you should possibly handle especially. So when you also see packets denied by an access control list, it is an informational message. When you see packet type invalid, it means that the messages that contain information that are not normally used only when debugging a program. So Cisco security level, when you are using the Cisco iOS, these are some of the things that will happen and the meaning of some of the things that happen, and then the level and the name are what you are seeing at the left. So these are login configurations. You see one router here, interface 0/0, and this router is segmenting 3 different networks. So this side is one part of the network, this side is also one part of the network, and then this side is also one part of the network that contains a demilitarized zone, demilitarized zone, DMZ land. It's a form of a security area of a network which has a special configuration. Demilitarized, uh, demilitarized zone, yes. So the it's a demilitarized zone, yes. So here you have a syslog client. Here, this is a syslog server that contains all the logs, and then you have a protected LAN. So all these configurations are configurations that will help you to enter into a syslog server or that will help you to log into a memory. And when you do CCNA3 proper, all these configurations are there for you to be able to do them. Now we have what we call network time protocol. network time protocol. And we know what protocols. Protocols are rules. For network time protocol, many features in a computer network depend on time. And in time, we call it synchronization. And then such as accurate time information in syslog messages, certificate-based authentications, in virtual private networks, in access control lists, with time range configurations, and key roller in routing protocol authentication, enhanced interior gateway routing protocol, and routing information protocol. Now, all that we are talking about plenty has to do with time and how networking devices, for that matter, routers which provide transport and distribution, how they are able to converge for each of them to have a particular timing to be able to understand each other. And some of the protocols that enhances or uses the network time protocol that uses time for convergence is the enhanced interior gateway routing protocol, or the routing information protocol. And for a particular organization to be able to have a leverage on the synchronization of their VPNs, access control, and everything, all of them depends on time. So most Cisco routers have two clocks. We have the battery powered system calendar and in the hardware, and then the software based system clock. These two clocks are managed separately. So we have the software clock, and then we have uh, the battery powered system calendar in the hardware. Now, when a router with a system calendar is initialized or rebooted, the system clock is set based on the time in the internal battery powered system calendar. So there should be synchronization in time. The time must be the same. Otherwise, there will be mismatch. The, the system calendar time must be set as the same time as the internal battery powered system time calendar. Now, the system clock can be set manually or by using the network time protocol. So an internet protocol used to synchronize the clocks of a network connected device to some time reference. So the network time protocol is an internet protocol used to synchronize clocks on the network connected device. Now, the network time protocol is an internet standard protocol currently at version 3 and specified in the request for comment 1306. So when you go to 1306 of any RFC document, you see network time protocol information, version 3, and how they have to be applied as a standard. How do we configure network time? Now, network time protocol is extremely efficient. No more than 1 packet per minute is necessary to synchronize two machines to within 1 minute millisecond of one another. Now, a Stratum 1 time server typically has a radio or atomic clock directly from Stratum 1 time server. Directly attached to the server. A Stratum 2 time server receives the time through network time protocol from a Stratum 1 server, etc. So you have server 1 that has a radio and atomic clock directly attached to the server. Now, the second server receives the time through network time protocol from this one so that they can converge. Because If they are not synchronized, there will be mismatch in time, and operation time, our understanding for their own understanding and for processes will be a problem. So when two network devices are connected, are connected, one takes the operation of another one's time to be able to process and converge or synchronize with the other according to the same time. And a machine that runs network time protocol automatically chooses the machine with the lowest stratum number to communicate with it via network time protocol as machines. So this one is vividly explained practically with lab sessions in CCNA 3. And those of you who want to do network and do networking proper will have to do those courses to be able to really understand what networking is and not what we are doing in the classroom. Now, so these are the configurations. So this is a router, this is a router, this is a router. All of them are understanding each other through network time protocol. So these are the configurations for network time protocol. Now, if you want to implement backup and restore facilities, more secure protocols such as FTP, SCP, and HTTP can be used as means of transferring configurations and software. So configurations and software, client 1, FTP server can transfer configurations of software from the server to a client. Now, to use any of these more secure protocols, the username and password must be provided to authenticate the user. Now, the username and password are specified by placing the username and password as username so and so before the server name or the IP address in the URL. So if you want to use the FTP, SCP, HTTP or HTTPS protocols to provide information about configurations for restoration in a facility, if you are using Cisco devices, so these are some of the ways you can go about them, and these are the configurations. So username and password configurations. So if you want to transfer a particular username and password configurations through the FTP or to the HTTP, this is the command. So IP information through file transfer protocol server, username backup, it will back up to the FTP server. If you do IP hypertext transfer protocol client username backup, it will back up to the HTTP server and all that. And these are all ways of storing information for disaster name, for storing username and password information. So when you go into the configuration archive, the configuration archiving feature, part of the configuration replace the configuration rollback feature that can be used to create local or remote configuration archives. So you set a particular path for configuration archives, and then you write onto the memory. These are the configurations. And typically, I'm not going to ask you what you need to configure in a configuration archive and all that. And configure and replace. Now, the configure and replace command enables you to replace the currently running configurations on a router with a saved configuration without the need to reload. So configure terminal. So these are the configuration, configure and replace. These are the commands you need to perform on a router. And this will apply all necessary additions and deletions to replace the current running configuration with the contents of the specified configuration file, which is assumed to be complete configuration, not a partial configuration. Enter yes if you are sure you want to proceed. And when you enter yes, there's a total replacement of configurations. So today, we have been able to describe network maintenance tasks. We have been able to explain the differences between proactive and reactive network maintenance. We have been able to talk about well-known network maintenance models. We have been able to identify common maintenance procedures. And we have been able to describe tools required for network maintenance. Okay, so now, thank you so much. I'm going to open up for questions. Then